get into our talking about our parks department, all the different parks we offer, and the history of them. And that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about our main heritage parks. So that's our top 5 parks here. So we'll have Chestnut Ridge, Emery Park, Ellicott Creek Park, Como Lake Park, and Akron Falls Park. Those are our top 5 heritage parks. They're our oldest parks in our park system. And I usually like to do, I'll talk about one park and then ask if anyone has any questions. Like she did say, we're using the chat here today, so feel free, as I go through, type up a question, and I'll go through them either at the very end or in between each park, especially then. But basically, I have my PowerPoint up here. Hopefully everyone can see it. It's my first time doing this type of webinar, so it's definitely an interesting experience. So thank you guys and bear with me. But we're going to get started. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to type it in the chat and we'll be sure to get to them. So like I said, starting off, we'll be talking about our heritage parks. And the first one we like to talk about all the time is one of our oldest, Chestnut Ridge Park. It's one of the favorites. We like to call her the baby. She always gets the most attention. She's our largest park in the Parks Department system for Erie County. And the nice part is right now we're actually, as a Parks Department as a whole, and our parks themselves are actually celebrating their birthdays. So last year, 2024, we celebrated the commissioners, or like our whole department, and like when it became an entity, basically. So our commissioners were created, and the Parks Department itself was kind of created in 1924. And then next 25 in 1926, well, early to late 1925 was Chestnut Ridge and Emery. So right now we are celebrating Emery's 100th birthday, and then Chestnut Ridge is next. And then in 2026, we'll be doing a lot for Como Lake, and Ellicott Creek will be celebrating their 100th birthday. And then in 2027, it'll be the Bureau of Forestry, and we'll be doing a big 100-year, 4-year, 100-year birthday. It's a lot of birthdays, but it's amazing to see that these parks how much they've changed in 100 years and how much better they've become and how we're really doing the parks. It's an awesome experience. So Chestnut Ridge is about 1,200 acres. It is, like I said, one of the biggest parks we've got. Its main attractions, we're going to be the casino here. The one picture that you're seeing right now, that is actually the original casino, which I will talk about. It was originally made with wood, but you'll also show a picture in the next slide or two of what the casino looks like now, which was built in 1938 and then has actually stayed the same since then. We still have the same building to this day. Another great thing that many people don't know we have at Chestnut Ridge Park is a reservoir. We actually have an entire section of the park that is just a body of water, and that's where the commissioner's cabin is. It's a fabulous rental. It gets picked off very quickly during rental season, so it's a tough one to get, but it's a beautiful spot. Great for fishing. We've got a lot of beaver activity there right now, so it's kind of cool to see, but he's a little destructive. Then we got a lot of our different memorial sites. We've got Hamilton Ward Memorial. He was one of our first commissioners in our department back in 1924. He actually helped create the parks and really kind of made the parks what they are today. And we've got walkways, trails, memorials. A lot of things are named after Mr. Hamilton Ward. And that also leads us to a lot of different other memorials, such as Arthur Weaver. I believe he's our first engineer. And then all of our different buildings, Martin McKinnon Lodge, a lot of these things are all named after a superintendent of the park at some point or whatnot. And then, of course, we've got our Eternal Flame. And I'll show you some pictures of that, and we'll get a little more in depth into Eternal Flame, because that is one of the top spotlight locations at Chestnut Ridge. The 100 Steps, if you grew up going to Chestnut Ridge Park, you'll recognize the 100 Steps. Unfortunately, is blocked off now because it is completely falling apart due to erosion, and it is on a cliffside, so it makes sense. It's going to fall apart, and it's going to cost a lot to fix if we do fix it. But if you grew up in Chestnut Ridge, you know that was the best access down to the creek behind one of our shelters. And then, of course, Chestnut Ridge is known for its sledding hill. It's awesome toboggan chutes. It's one of the last locations to have toboggan chutes that are in use. And we'll go into that too. So we got a little bit of everything, a lot to cover. So I'm not going to probably talk too much about every single thing because there is a lot per park. So feel free to ask any questions you got. So originally Chestnut Ridge was named for the chestnut trees that were found throughout the park, mostly found on the hill itself where the sledding hill is. That used to be completely covered with trees. Unfortunately, very quickly, chestnut trees died off due to a blight that still ransacks American chestnuts constantly. We are trying to combat this as best as we can by doing hybrid and cross breeding of Asian chestnut and American chestnuts in hopes that we can bring the species back to Chestnut Ridge. So if you ever see some small trees around that are very protected but very short and are chestnut trees, and you know what a chestnut tree looks like, those are our hybrids that we're keeping an eye on to hope maybe someday we can bring them back. Almost all of our parks, especially these heritage parks, were all constructed during the New Deal era. So this was during the Great Depression, and basically the Work Progress Administration, or the WPA, was the employer, and they employed millions of people, all from 1935 to 1943. So this is what getting people back into work, really kind of getting people back out there and giving them jobs, and a kind of great spot time to get them in their parks and really get to place. So they are doing stonework, they're doing masonry, they're doing you'll see in these pictures here, a lot of the roads were made by the men and women. Our shelters were made with wood, with stone, a little bit of everything. So especially at Chestnut, it's a very vast park. You have some very wooded areas and some very open areas. So we actually ended up adding 3.5 miles of road throughout the park so that there was access to different picnic areas, different hideaway spots. And even today, we actually have just repaved everything, and this is slated for all of our parks, of course. But at Chestnut Ridge specifically, we've just finished off repaving every single road. And it's really nice and smooth. People are very happy with it. You'll see a lot of shelters we still have actually to this day, but a lot are gone. I think at one point we had 40 shelters, and now we're down to, I want to say, 23. So a lot less shelters, but they're all bigger sizes. So still get that picnic feel, but there's also still a lot of hiking involved at Chestnut Ridge too. So that casino that I was talking about, you can see in that colored picture on the bottom left of your screen here. That's the casino we have currently, and that was actually built in 1938. So that first casino you saw, and I'll go back real quick. This is the building that was the original casino, was originally built in 1925. And most things, when you build it with wood, unfortunately burn. And you'll see it's a main theme in a lot of our parks is a lot of things end up burning down at some point. Whether it's from vandalism or just natural causes. So the casino itself, that beautiful 2-story wooden casino, was built in 25, but then that unfortunately was destroyed in a fire in 1932. And we actually were able to build what you see in this lower picture here in 1938. And we actually completely built that with rocks and stone, not only from the city streets of Buffalo, but also from the Erie Canal. So we took a lot of those rocks called riprap. So basically, it's the rock that's at the bottom of Erie Canal, and kind of they used that up, and basically everything's reused. And if you see us doing any kind of restructuring of shelters, if that rock was used, it is a historical landmark in a sense. So we have to reuse it. So any shelter we've taken down, that rock is being reused somewhere else. So that's a really cool thing. We're always reusing stuff. Another great staple to Chestnut Ridge is the toboggan chutes. Those were originally built in 1927, and they were only 12 feet tall. They were very short compared to what they are now. I'm not even sure how tall they are, but if you don't like heights, don't recommend climbing those stairs. But you can see in the bottom right corner here of that picture, that was the original toboggan chutes. We actually used to even have a ski jump at one point. But then people just kept getting hurt, so that got ousted pretty quickly, unfortunately. So originally there were 3 very large toboggan chutes, but like most things, less people working, less things to people to upkeep of the area. Our toboggan chutes did go into disrepair and they were shut down in 2005. But in 2010, we actually took down one and restored the other two, and we actually still use them today. So this past winter, I think we actually opened up the most we've opened up in a couple years. I want to say we opened almost maybe 10 times, which is pretty impressive for how much upkeep it takes to even put the snow, because we have to have a nice perfect layer of snow on the toboggan chutes. You have to have enough staff to be able to run it, because two people have to be up there at all times. So it's quite a process. But when we were able to open it and the everything was ready to go and the conditions were right, it was an awesome experience. And if you remember tobogganing as a kid, then yes, if you can get your grandkids or you still have a toboggan, feel free, bring it, bring grandkids, anything. Toboggans, as long as they're open. And to see those things and to see when those things are open, it's on our website, erie.gov/parks. And during the winter and summer, we have a little section that basically says what's open and what's not. Right now that we're going into summer, it'll tell you when the beach is open, when the golf courses have carts available, when it's no carts, things like that. And then in winter, it'll tell you what sled hills are open and what things are open as well. So it's a great resource to have, erie.gov/parks. So Hamilton Ward Jr., this was our commissioner here. He was one of the originals, and he really helped Erie County and found the Erie County Park System in 1924. He is the one who was like, you know what, we need parks that are farther away from the city to get people to want to go. It was one of those pack your whole family in the car, drive the distance to Chestnut Ridge and stay all day long. It was really kind of a fun adventure, full days at the park itself. And his memorial is actually found in the park. It's found on the west side of the park on Ward Hill Walkway. If you've been to Chestnut Ridge, you'll know this is right at the bottom of a hill called Mother. And she's called that because she is a mother. She's a very, very difficult hill to climb. So to be able to go see that, it's not the fields, unfortunately, but it is a paved area up to that point, and it is marked exactly where it is. And it's really cool. It's a stone that has this plaque with the dedication to Hamilton Ward in the middle. And he's actually an amazing person because he actually donated most of the land that Chestnut Ridge is on. Him, the Newton family, and a family actually were big reason that the park exists today. He actually, and why he actually used to own very close to where the Eternal Flame is located. So the Eternal Flame, or the burning spring, is to basically say it's a gas leak. It's a small seep of gas coming out of the shale in the ground. And what makes it kind of eternal in a way is because it's in this grotto. So you'll see in the Eternal Flame picture there of the waterfall, it's in this little tiny tunnel, almost like a little kind of cave. So it kind of protects it from the weather a little bit. It still goes out, but it does protect it from the weather for the most part. And luckily, the best part is you can light it with a lighter. I've seen lighter. It's one of the top places to go. It used to be a very, very secret place. I even remember as a kid, no one really would go, and it would be busy, but it wasn't crazy like it is now. And we didn't have a parking lot. It was, you parked on a road, Seaford Road, and you had to walk all the way down and then have to come all the way back up. But it's still it's the top attraction. We've had people from California come to see it. But it's not the only. The Eternal Flame is an awesome location. One of our more difficult trips. You are changing elevator quickly. There are over 100 steps you have to walk down and walk up. And it is completely in the water. So I always say, you have a friend who can videotape the thing, or honestly, this picture gives it justice. It's really cool to see it in person, but the pictures do a really great job of showing the magic of this flame in the middle of a waterfall. It's really kind of cool. So here I just got like a map of the park itself. I know it's kind of tiny, but you can see where the Eternal Flame is actually all the way at the bottom of the map. It's actually almost 1.5 miles away from the main portion of the park. But most of our section of the park is going to be closer to Newton Road. And that's where the sledding hill is and most of our shelters and stuff. So feel free, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And if not, I'm going to jump right into what we have. Ellicott Creek Park is next. So Ellicott Creek Park was brought into the Parks Department system in 1926. One of the smallest parks. It's only about 106 acres. And it's a lot more, this is like some more of our city park. It's on Niagara Falls Boulevard. So it's our easiest access for city folk, and a lot of people that need the bus. So for adventure bus as well, we actually offer the adventure bus to a lot of our parks that the buses don't go to. So Ellicott Creek Park is one of them because full access from bus stops right around the corner, right nearby. Whereas Como Lake doesn't necessarily have a bus stop, or Chestnut Ridge doesn't have a bus stop at it. So we've offered that up every summer. Now it's a great way for people that don't necessarily get to see these parks to get out for the day, take a boat, and hang out here all day long and see a park that might not have visited before. Here at Ellicott Creek Park, we also have a casino, and you're probably thinking, okay, casino, we're not gambling in the park, right? No, we don't have slot machines, unfortunately. Casino is actually another word for a gathering place. So back in the 1920s and 30s, casino was used for a gathering place because a lot of our areas also had a lot of Native American influence and like that. That was another word that they used as well as a gathering place. We get a lot of gathering in these locations, picnics, everything. So, was that main place for big clubs and things to meet up or meetings. Casinos are usually still one of the biggest spots that you'll have. Excuse me, sorry, there's a message that was a little intense. So those are usually the area, and they do get rented. We have all our buildings rented as well. A nice part about Ellicott Creek is they actually have two bike trails that run through the Erie Canal Trail and the Shoreline Trail. And these are the trails that go all the way up following the Erie Canal into Niagara County. And then you also have them going all the way down, all the way to Harbor Center area, canal side, and even the outer harbor. So these trails are very extensive. They actually go through a few of our parks as well, such as Isle View, and some of our what we call pocket parks. So Black Rock Canal, you'll have Towpath, and maybe even Times Beach and Harbor. So really cool if you like to bike. Some really nice paved areas will take you all the way through the whole anywhere water from Ellicott all the way onto the city of Buffalo. So that's pretty sweet. We've got another building called Friendship Building. It's a great rental space. We have kayak launch at this park because it is in the middle of Ellicott Creek and Tonawanda Creek. Hence why we have this thing called a flume. So we'll talk about the flume in the next slide or two. But then we also have the Ellicott Island Bark Park. This is actually a very well-known and top spot for dogs. It's an island designated for dogs. And it's finally open for the season. So if you have a pup who likes to go out and run around with some friends, I highly recommend the Ellicott Creek Dog Park. And this is also a great location to see our old boathouse, and I'll talk about that as well. So this park, like I said, started in 2026 with the purchase of about 40 acres. And it was private land of 40 acres of private land for about $20,000. It's pretty good. And then the rest of the land was through county tax foreclosure. So it's a very hodgepodge connection of the park. And you'll see in the map at the end, there's a good section of the park where it's very, very, this is the park. This is where your buildings are, your shelters are, your soccer fields, baseball, and the part that follows the road that's a little bit more separated, secluded, things like that. And that's where the bike trail goes. This was extremely popular, especially because it's close to the city of Buffalo. Days, Sundays, holidays, summer days, this park could see anywhere from 20 to 40,000 people. And that, if you think like that's a lot, it is. But you go through this park now, and it's almost overwhelming how many people can fit. That's really cool if you are interested in how the game works. They're always playing. I think they have weekend leagues as well, and they're always out there. A game's always happening. So if you really want to learn about cricket, it's a really good place to go and check out how it works. Unfortunately, this park had the negative reputation out of our parks, 70s and the 90s, and a lot of parks actually, that fact. Um, all this reputation due to neglect, disrepair. There's a lot of vandalism, a lot of folks that people didn't like. There's a lot of complications going on in the park and a lot of drinking. They all at one point like almost cop presence, police presence, sheriff presence, everything. It was prominent in the park. There was a 9 o'clock time, everyone had to be out. Like they kicked everyone out of this park. And we still do that. We do like to clear the parks as best we can because there's really no reason to be in a park at night just asking for trouble. So be able to kind of fix the reputation has been pretty great. And every park has gotten really nice facelifts over the years. And we've really seeing that neglect and disrepair and over those years really kind of woke people up and was like, no, we need to make sure our parks get the love they deserve. So the island park itself, so Ellicott Island was constructed to really improve navigation on Tonawanda Creek, which is the canal per se. So your canal flows into Tonawanda Creek, which then flows into Niagara River, right? So you'll see in that map in the middle there, this island was created by a man named Joseph. Basically, he just put this dirt up. He dredged out the area, and kind of create this island at 3 Mile Bend is what they called it because this was the 3 mile point on the canal. And this was a way basically to allow families to have an area to boat that wasn't in canal traffic. So it was a safer spot for people to swim, to boat, and just kind of gave another part of the park for people to be in. And to utilize. So it almost could have became its own park at one point, and it did. It was a nature preserve at one point, just kept completely on its own to do its thing. And then we became a dog park after that, and is actually now considered one of the best in Western New York. You'll see in that top picture there, the boathouse. That was created for the boats for families to use, but actually was used by the rowing club of Buffalo for a very long time. That club is amazing. It's actually one of the first clubs that allowed women and high schoolers and minorities to row instead of just men being able to row. So it's really awesome that was able to be utilized for 12 years. And then unfortunately in the 70s, I think 1979, the boathouse did catch fire. And so that beautiful roof is gone now. But the base of that boathouse does still exist to this day. So if you go to the park, actually able to see this island elf and the oh my, oh jeez, I can't tell. It could be my full Wi-Fi too. So hopefully, having that problem, feel free to ask any more questions. I can fill it in. Not a problem. So both I mentioned how the park is in between. So these are very prone to flooding. They will flood every year for the most part, depending on how much rain we get, how much snow we get, and how quickly it melts. So it's been known to flood on many of our biggest times that we've had issues in the past were in 1947, 1977, and in 1985. So those are the three biggest times we've had flooding. And when we say flooding, it flooded the entire park. Like took trees down, no usage whatsoever. It got swampy. So we created this thing called a flume. So basically, I will see if we'll be able to show you in there our maintenance area. There's a portion of a hill, like a down and back up, kind of near our maintenance complex. And that is where we put what allows the Tonawanda Creek to flow into the Ellicott Creek instead of flooding the entire park itself. I've only seen it once, maybe twice in my 5 years here, but when that water flows between the creeks, it is like rapids. It is pretty incredible how quick that water comes through that area. But it is nice that we have that flume, and it really protects the shelters and the integrity of all the buildings, and especially the trees as well. So, a great thing that we added in. So you'll see in this picture, there's that little tiny blue water in the middle, little body of water there. If you come across, it actually comes through where the grass green comes through there. And then, I don't know if you can see my mouse coming on here. It comes through and it actually goes across where this little parking lot is by the influence Ellicott Creek, which is pretty sweet. So next up, we've got Como Lake Park. I'm actually in the casino of Como Lake Park currently. This is our beautiful casino, a rentable shelter as well. It's a beautiful spot, especially in summer, winter. It's really in winters. This is where the ice rinks will be right outside the door here, and our sled hill is right behind it as well. So this is another park found in 1926, 130 acres, which most of it is in a very good park setting with lots of shelters and open areas. But then we also do have areas that complete nice trails that run through as well. Like I said, I'm in the casino currently. We also have Lancaster Place, which is another awesome rental spot, a little bit smaller near tennis courts. And then our biggest shelter rental here is Bowen Grove. And this is a separate off of Bowen Road across the rest of the park. And it's very separate and secluded, and it's a very large space, completely getting a nice facelift with paint this year. So it's going to be very nice. If you've ever been to Bowen Grove, that one was another shelter favorite. We have the Boy Scout Trail, which was created in the 90s. That was great. Best spot to find bluebells. I just found some the other day. And it's a great place to go birding, to go fishing, to flip some rocks or crayfish or frogs, and really to find any kind of flower or just go for a leisurely walk. Another one was we've got our lake, our Como Lake, we like to say here, and our lighthouse, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Our ice skating rinks are a great one with our islands as well, that lead over to our lake house. And then the Lancaster Dog Park. A couple years ago, we created this dog park because it is a great place. Lancaster is a very large neighborhood, a very large town, village. So we wanted to give them an area not only for the parks, but it also does help with off-leash dog situations when you can say, well, guess what? We have a spot you can take your dog off leash and enjoy. So the dog parks are really helpful in kind of letting their dogs let out without bothering you to put your leash on. So originally, Lancaster was a village park, and it was turned over to the county when this park became a little bit too much for the town to take care of. It became a little bit too much to maintain, and just there were too many things that they had to deal with otherwise. So they gave it over to the county in about 1926, or yeah, just around then. And the best part is the Lancaster folks, we have a Lancaster Friends of Como Lake Park group, and most of our parks do have a friendship group that really help with planting flowers or park cleanups. They're really fun events as well. So the Lancaster Sportsman Club actually originally planted over 10,000 trees in this park. So if you're ever seeing them all kind of dying at the same time, a lot of our trees are all about the same age. So unfortunately, that is what happens when a tree gets a little, they do die. So kind of whatever we do take down, we've been doing a lot of tree plantings this last couple years. I think we had a grant this year. Hopefully it stays in place, where they will be planting trees and bushes and things to kind of offset the amount of trees we might be taking out. So that's our hope, is the more trees, the better. Originally, the Como Lake two entrances, Como Boulevard and the Lake Street entrance. And then they created the Bowen Road entrance so that there was a straightaway, you could go straight through the park in 1954. And originally this was mostly made for like fire trucks, police officers, if they needed to get through on a quicker basis. Personally, I would just take Broadway, but it is a good way to drive if you needed, and just being able to access the park from both ends is a great thing. All these structures were built in about the 50s, so they were in the later WPA era. So they're later in the projects era. And they actually created the casino, which actually still stands today. And this park actually boathouse at 1.2, which unfortunately is no longer standing, but we do still have the remnants of it where we have put a pier, which is an awesome spot to be. Actually, picture. Let me check. Ooh. So in this picture here, you'll see that building in the background. That's actually the original boathouse. Unfortunately, not standing anymore, like I said. But we do have a nice pier that we've just finished last summer. So there is fishing pier there. Brand new, very nice. And our lighthouse hasn't changed. So the lake itself, you're like, that's not a lake. It's like a pond, right? Pretty much. So the Como Lake itself is a man-made lake. It was started by Henry W. Box in 1891, excuse me, by dredging the entire area. So it's basically one giant dug up hole. And that's how he created what are the islands. So they dug into the grass there, created their pond, and any kind of mud, dirt that they pulled out, they created these little islands so that if you're walking from, let's say you're at the casino here, you over and the disc golf course goes across it as well. It's a great little jaunt through some islands. You've got the creeks that go through it. And it brings you right up to that fishing pier that I was discussing and over to where the lighthouse is. So the first dam was created in 1892 after they dredged the lake. And that was a lot to allow the lake to get filled with water. Unfortunately, as we know, Cayuga flow pretty hard when it rains or after good snow. Ice booms are pretty frequent after winter hits. Ice shelves will completely take over the floodplains. It's really quite a specialty. So with all that dirt and debris coming down Cayuga Creek and really kind of flowing very fast, by 1925 the lake became a wetland, which is pretty normal in what you expect from a man-made anything. Man-made, especially waterways, are going to fill back in because it's not natural in a sense. So then we had to basically dig it back out, create a new dam. So they created a new dam in 1934, and they really kind of finished it off and started dredging in 1926. They dredged it up, created that new dam in 1934, filled her back in again. And then we actually did some more restoration in 2018. And then we dredged it again in 2019. So if you're here in 2019, you might remember a lot of dirt being taken out by the highway department. The goats were here. We had goats eating buffalo. Here eating the knotweed, because we've discovered that's the best way to combat the knotweed at the moment is goats. So all of that dirt in 2019 that we actually dug out, and we dug out the creeks as well, just allows the better flow of water as well. All of that dirt actually went over to our sled hill and is what made our sled hill a little bit bigger. So we reuse everything. Just like I said with the rock and the stone from the city, bringing it here to make shelters, that dirt, make a sled hill. So we really don't like to let things go to waste. Anything we can use, we really try to use. It's a really good process. So the lighthouse itself was built in 1925 and 1926. And it wasn't necessarily supposed to be a functioning lighthouse. I mean, it's not on a lake. There's no boats going. It's not like you're really worried about it. But we did have light up in 1933. And then we've restored it again in 2021. I put it up now. If you're ever driving down, I'm not sure, near Pardee Street, the road there, you might see the lighthouse icon. So, and it looks exactly the same as in this picture right here. The only thing we really restore a lot is the top, the very, very top. because it's usually like a copper of some kind, so it's got that really cool bluish or turquoise. We did get rid of those stairs seen in this picture, and kind of leveled out that land a little bit, so it's not as much of a slope. But the lighthouse is pretty much exactly the same. And then we do have our Cayuga Creek Trail, and I mentioned that Boy Scout Trail. And that's over by Shelter. We did renumber everything now, so if you're coming to the park for any kind of event, check our maps. We have those on our website. I'll say it again, erie.gov/parks. On our website under Como Lake, all of our maps, and that'll show you all of the main building numbers, shelter numbers, because we did renumber, so make sure you know where you're going. And if not, I'm sure one of us will be around, rangers. So that trail itself was dedicated in the 90s, and I actually believe that picture below there, that raccoon costume, might be one of our maintenance guys who still to this day works here. So I'm not sure if that's the truth, but I'm convinced that it might be him. So that's a pretty cool thing. And it's a great trail, and Boy Scouts still take care of it. And it's well taken care of. So here you'll see our Como Lake map here. So you'll see that this one side of the park is really used, but then across the Cayuga Creek there, it's really not used too much. There's actually a trail on that side. You have to access it from Bowen Road. So Bowen Road here, and that's the Bowen Grove Shelter. So we actually own all of this section over here as well, and we try to keep everything over there as natural as possible. We do have a lot of the trail on the other side of Cayuga Creek from the main park. It is a great trail as well. It's very well traveled. It's a little muddy, but follows the creek very nice. But the other side of the road there, the other side by Bowen Grove Shelter, is completely wild. It's been known to have osprey come through the creek, bald eagles, all different types of animals. So we try to keep everything as natural as possible if it's not a park setting. So Akron Falls, I have 2 more left. Akron Falls Park wasn't founded with the rest of them. It was actually founded in 1947 because it was also a village park for a very long time. They kept it for a little bit longer than we did. They did a lot of the work themselves because Akron Falls is big. It is the village, and those people love this. Serves a facelift, and it's getting there. We're park at a time, but this park is getting its love, and so it's getting there. It's about 284 acres. It's a lot of water here. Its main attraction is the falls itself, hence the name Akron Falls Park. We also have buildings. This one doesn't, but it does have a lodge called Cummings Lodge. Mr. Cummings was a superintendent at one point. And you'll notice sometimes there's actually a home on the property of Akron Falls that is considered private residence. And actually, almost village parks had a building, a home somewhere on the property where that superintendent lived. So when you were a superintendent of a park, up until I want to say some of our parks, up until maybe even 2013, 14 maybe, people were living in that park, which is pretty cool to think that someone who ran that park was there 24/7. He lived there and ran the park, which was pretty cool. Akron Falls is another one of our parks that has ice skating. So Como Lake and Akron are our top 2 parks for ice skating. Most of our parks did have ice skating at heritage parks did have ice skating at one point, but they are very difficult to take care of. Akron does a great job, and Como takes a lot of work to maintain those ice rinks. And we've been lucky. This year, we actually were able to find for the first 3 years, or 2-3 years, because we just haven't. The ice won't solidify for us; it won't freeze. So it's kind of nice to get to see people back out on the ice this year, which was nice. Like I said, in the lower falls, Akron Falls, and that's that main attraction. And then the upper falls, it's off limits. We don't really allow anyone up there. because it is a little dangerous due to caves and uneven rocks and stuff like that. We have a dam, a man-made dam and reservoir over there as well near the Parkview Bridge. There is another island. So like I said, all that dirt from the reservoir had to go somewhere, create an island. We have the old McMullen Trestle or Jeb's Bridge, which of course everyone's favorite, the creek that runs right through the park itself, Murder Creek. So we'll talk about Murder Creek as well. So like I said, Akron Falls started as a village park in the early 30s. And most of it was constructed as a WPA project. But they used different rock than you would see in parks like Coma Lake or Chestnut Ridge. They didn't use that blocky looking rock. They used what looked almost like, I like to think of it as like melty candles. So if you look in the picture, that right picture there kind of looks like more cementy, kind of weird style rock. So all rock they used was Akron's known for its mining, and its abundance of limestone and gypsum. So that is why we have a lot of caves in this park. We have a lot of weird rock and formations and fossils, because it is part of what's called the Onondaga Escarpment. And this basically is just an entire rock face and rock section of limestone, gypsum, that helped Akron basically become the most thriving place for cement. So we had 3 cement industry families here. You had Cummings, Akron Cement, and 2 other cement companies, and they had each section of the park. Had to have water, so water, rock mining, everything like that. Basically that's where their rock and their cement. Known as Jeb's Bridge, became McMullen Trestle, was where this Akron Central Railroad actually spanned over Murder. That was how they got cement in, rock out, rock and cement out, excuse me. And that trestle spanned right over, and you'll see in that top picture there, right over the creek. And if you're standing, I think it's shelter 5, I want to say shelter 4 or 5, I believe it's 5, right near our new playground. If you look across the creek bed that way from up top, you can actually see where the trestle used to be based off railroad location, and the railroad's not there anymore, but you can still see like kind of like where it was. So it's kind of cool, and be able to point that out when you're through. Many fossils are actually found in this park. This is the park I like to do one of my favorite fossil programs in the wintertime, actually. Then this is due to the rock found in the area. Limestone is a great location to find fossils because limestone is a great indicator of a shallow sea. And it has this thing called karst topography, and that's where you get your souls, your caves, and that's what makes a lot of Akron Falls and the Upper Falls and the creek itself a little dangerous. You've got a lot of holes and caves with a lot of circulating water that you don't know where it will go. And that's why we're super strict about people swimming or jumping off the falls is our biggest no-no, because we have had stories where people jump and don't come back. So it's one of those things you got to keep an eye on, because it's not a good day when you have to rescue someone from that. So it's a rite of passage in Akron. I know it for many years. I've been told by many while I was doing programs at Akron for this history, and they're like, it's a rite of passage, and I get it. I grew up in East Aurora. We had rites of passage too. Every park does. But it's interesting to know why these are so dangerous, and that is because of those sinkholes and caves. So once the county took over this park in 1947, we actually worked over 30 grand into of work was done under the Erie County Emergency Work Relief Bureau. A lot of words. And this really went into the reservoir being updated, a lot of the gardens being updated, playgrounds, and mostly went into the Parkview Bridge. So in your bottom picture to the left is your Parkview Bridge, and originally was fixed in 1988 because it was slowly deteriorating because it's built on shale. And shale likes to break. It's a very breakable rock. So as it slowly started to deteriorate, they actually tore it out and built a replica of it in 2008. And this kind of really allowed not only to be able to drive down Parkview Road, but allowed you to go through that small tunnel there and get to the Brooklyn section of the park. So there's a section of a park you can access on Brooklyn Road. But then this also leads you right through, and you can walk all the way to the reservoir and all the way to the falls. So it allows you to really see that nice bridge. It's very gorgeous. It's got the dam that goes right down below it, and keeps Murder Creek flowing. So this area completely on top American tribe and ran over the upper and lower falls, and then continues to the lake that I do in this back shore. And for better that actually used to be a spot for boating. Actually, and same with Como Lake on the lake here, that's where the ice skating would take place. People would ice skate on our lakes. But then it just wouldn't really be conducive. The ice wouldn't freeze as fast as it was, a little bit more unsafe every year. So our more man-made areas for ice skating were created and are still in use today. So the lower fall itself is 44 feet tall. Also, it's a pretty tall waterfall. And then your upper falls is above that. So if you go up farther up creek there, about 20 tall, and that one has the deepest caves. That one was most, I would say, making it more dangerous and wide off limits. But the lower falls in the middle of the fall. So best time to see the fall, I would say, is probably right after winter. Springtime is great. Everything's green. It's absolutely beautiful. But you're actually gonna have water coming over the top, and you're actually just gonna have water in general, because once you hit midsummer, this waterfall gets bone dry, and that's usually when our swimming issues come in. This is an area, and reason we don't allow for swimming is because of that possible pull down. There could be some types of caves under the water. We don't know how deep that water is. It could be 20 feet, it could be 60 feet. We have no idea. So it's more of a danger, and I've seen some massive turtles, massive fish in there. I wouldn't go in it. So it's one of those types of issues we do kind of try to educate as best we can, and why we don't allow it. But mostly it's the jumping that's our biggest concern. So the water that's coming out the middle there that I started to talk about, you're probably wondering why is it coming out the middle? Why isn't it all coming over the top? And that's because of that mining that I mentioned. So due to all that mining, water is actually just flowing into random caves all over the place down Murder Creek. And it's just flowing down and then just going to pop out wherever it wants. So there's known to be possibly a small cave over there. I don't think there's access to it. There's a point in the creek above where the water just kind of falls into a ledge and disappears. And it comes right out the middle. So it's really cool. It's a beautiful spot to see the water coming all the way down the edges, all the way down the far left. And it's just peaceful to sit on our viewing platform and really see how beautiful it is. So very good question. So there's not many trails per se. It's not very long. It's a very short hiking trail. It is part of the Finger Lakes Finger Lakes Trail, so the FLT trail, the orange. So it does actually keep going, and it does do so. That's really the only part of the trail that we have, and that trail consists of basically from where that Parkview Bridge goes through to Brooklyn, and it's basically up to the falls, excuse me, and then leaves the park from there. So not many miles. It's, if anything, maybe a mile, maybe mile two, not a lot. And it's very, very flat. It's not flat. It does have some good hills, but it is pretty sturdy. It's not too rooty. It's a good trail. It's not too difficult to easy one to do from the reservoir to the falls and back. So not many miles, unfortunately. And then of course, there's the legends of Murder Creek stories. Most are Native American legends about why it was called Murder Creek and how the name came to be. But one of the ones that's one of my favorites is why we call Bridge McMullen Trestle. So that story is basically about a woman named Sadie McMullen. And this was, oh gosh, how long ago? Way back in the 1800s. She was a house nurse, or she was basically she was babysitting two young girls, and they went out to the grocery store with Sadie. The two girls went out with the grocery store with Sadie while the parents were away, and they had to go pick up the essentials for dinner. And back they saw Sadie convinced them to cross the Jeb's Bridge to get home quicker. And unfortunately, for some reason, Sadie ended up pushing both of those girls off that bridge. And one of the girls unfortunately died, but the other one somehow lived. And they went to trial and actually everything. And Sadie was actually put into the psychiatric hospital not far from Akron itself for a very long time, and then was released. And frankly, she was released, and that was it. No one knew where Sadie went or why anything or even if they no right put her off. But when the one girl who did survive was rescued, the first thing she said was, Sadie was right to push us off that bridge. It's rather mysterious, but that is the story of Sadie McMullen Trell, oh my gosh. And why Murder Creek is such a spooky place. Some people say if you stay in the area where that trust is, you can hear voices, other types of folklore and what's true, what's not, I don't know. So a lot of very cool stories, and the Historical Society there has some amazing, especially renditions, and I can never tell the story well enough. I don't usually tell that one because I don't want to get the facts wrong, of course. They deserve the best recognition, and why those stories are incredible to tell. So if you're ever in Akron and you want to visit the Historical Society, they have things not just about the park itself, but about the Native Americans in the area and the town itself as well. So highly recommend. Little plug there for my friends at Historical Society. You'll see a map of Akron. It is a smaller park. Murder Creek pretty much runs it all. Up here on the far right here is where you'll have our Cummings Lodge, and this is where the falls is going to be near shelter 6 and 7. And it's got a nice parking lot in there, and that trail that you mentioned, it's very, very, very short here. It goes right from shelter 12 and 11 all the way to shelter 6, and then just leaves the park. But this part is part of Finger Lakes Trail. So if you're ever looking to start somewhere, that's a great location to park. My last park, and the one I like to leave for last, is my favorite, Emery. And I'm not supposed to pick favorites, but I do. I grew up in Emery Park, so I'm kind of biased here. Emery Park is our oldest park. Don't tell Chestnut. Emery Park is bought in 1925. It's about 489 acres. And it's one of my favorite parks. It is quiet. It's always been it's just off the end of the 400. So if you're driving, you take the 400 to the circle, and you go right to Emery Road, and she's right there. It's nice, easy to find. We have some main attractions, lots of buildings in this park. You've got the ski lodge. Because we have is wonderful. It was good to get out this year. You actually use it and be out and about. It's a great place to go and learn to ski because the hills aren't too difficult and you don't have to pay. So that's always a perk instead of going to holiday Valley or Kissing Bridge, you don't have to pay. You get to learn how to ski for free. Then instead of, we used to have what's called the Sneller Ski Bar, which we have then now replaced with what's called the Magic Carpet. And basically this is a conveyor belt, like you would see at an airport, and it takes you up the hill instead of having to hold on to a T-bar to come back up. So it is a really nice addition. It takes about 8 minutes to get up that Magic Carpet, but it's much easier for kids and newbies to get up the hill. That's for sure. We have Richardson Cottage, which is a nice section secluded near the field house, an amphitheater. The amphitheater was actually just completely restored. We used all the rock from before, that same exact rock from the WPA era. And we actually were able to make that nice and sleek. Added a new shelter that we actually just had our first event there this past 2 weekends. 2 weekends ago. 4th, we had our Fighter Festival. Love that at the end. Great first event at the theater, at the amphitheater itself. That was awesome to let people see it. Really used for things and like that. Now, Fieldhouse, what used to be the Emery Inn, and I'll have pictures of that as well, which unfortunately is no longer standing. We have 2 waterfalls at this park as well, also pretty big waterfalls. We have the Clifford Robert Pettis Memorial, and this actually is a memorial to the state forester. Like, he was the first state forester. Why he's at Emery Park, I'm not sure. I don't know if maybe he suggestions a face for the area. I don't know. But it's a random memorial in the middle of nowhere. Kind of cool to see if you can find it. And then we have a George Washington Memorial as well. I think it was, we planted a tree and put up a rock with his memorial on it for his 100th birthday. So that is also somewhere in the park. It's near where the Emery Inn used to be, and it's just so funny because it's random. It's like, why we have some of these random memorials. It is what it is, but it's cool to come across some of these things. So like I said, the Parks Commission purchased this land in 1925 from Helen Emery herself. The Emery family lived on this land since the 1800s. So this made it the first park in the system. She donated it all, or we bought it from her, 195 acres of it, including the homestead that and building and stuff for $23,000. That's how much we bought it for. And their farmstead was actually built in the early 1800s. So the building, unfortunately, that we did take down, and wished we could have saved in some way, was around for a very long time. It was up until almost 2013. So this farmstead is included only rock gardens, but that they had rocks, all different types, really awesome artistic stuff. Then also buildings throughout the area. Added additional land in 1926 with the Harry E. Richardson property, hence Richardson Cottage. And that area, he gave us 55 total acres that needed to be kept wild. He did not want it to be developed in any way if he could. So we added that cottage, and the rest of that given us, we kept completely wild. So it's a very cool area to explore. Well, and you'll see that picture in the middle there, actually an incinerator.
Hi, Nicole. It's Elisa here. We're getting a big lag from where you are.
All right. Things is burn garbage and drink water, stagnant water. So we've learned over time, but I mean we survived. So that's how it works. Right? Live and learn. But it's cool to point that out and say something that was used every part of an incinerator at some point. Um, so the Emery here below is our picture there, a beautiful home. It was established in 1926, a restaurant and a historical museum, because the family had a lot of colonial ways. We'll play this out, and if there's any other questions, feel free to message them in. So the Emery Inn was originally a restaurant down below. You could see, you could get a porterhouse dinner for $4.50, which was pretty awesome. So I'm like, could you imagine getting that today? Yeah. So if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in there. If you can't hear me and it's getting a little funky, it's nice because I am on Wi-Fi as well. So we'll try our best. We're almost done though. And then upstairs was a historical museum filled with colonial and Civil War relics from the family itself. So they actually really worked hard to undergo and get the in itself on historical designation. But unfortunately, that got denied in 1984. They even tried to get restoration to make it historical again in 1990 to add money, get funding to kind of preserve it, make it that preservation was also not given, which led to basically it going into disrepair, a lot of mold assistance in every building we have. And unfortunately, it did get demolished in 2013 due to that deteriorating. It does and could have been something amazing. We could have just the fact that we had such an old home available to us and not being able to be used and saved is really heartbreaking. But we have learned from that. And if you've been to Went Beach Park, we are actually saving that mansion as we can currently and hope that we can use it for something of some kind. And kind of we're able to save up, like we've been able to, it's got some great bones and we're actually able to completely rewire the electric, and we're working on the siding and the outside roof, and just hoping it can be used again. So we're learning only, and a lot of buildings in our park are going quickly, and we need to preserve funding. That's one thing. So right, wages being helped, that all happy about. I mentioned the as the ups for it. Ski Lodge was a great spot. It's not only a great wedding venue, but it's a great spot for warming up. We also have Stores Lodge.
Nicole, hi, can you hear me okay? You guys, I'm so sorry to everyone that's viewing. I'm not sure if you were having some issues